Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly realized you have no idea why you are there? Or found yourself in a conversation with someone you know well, only to struggle to remember their name at the exact moment you need it most? At first, these moments seem small, easy to ignore. You might laugh them off and tell yourself it is just part of getting older. But when they start happening more often, something begins to change. A quiet sense of worry starts to build in the background. You begin to wonder if this is how it starts. Not all at once, but slowly, subtly, one forgotten detail at a time. Most people accept this as normal. They believe memory loss is simply a natural part of aging, something that cannot be avoided. So instead of questioning it, they adapt to it. They rely more on notes, avoid situations where they might forget, and gradually stop challenging their minds the way they used to. But what if that belief is wrong? What if the problem is not that your brain is getting weaker, but that it is no longer being used in the right way? According to Dr. Michael Carter, a neurologist who has spent years studying how memory works, the brain does not simply decline with age. In many cases, it becomes less active because it is no longer being properly stimulated. And when that happens, memory, focus, and clarity begin to fade. But here is the surprising part. Restoring that function does not require hours of training or complicated routines. In fact, it can begin with something much simpler than most people expect. A short, focused habit that takes less than 60 seconds a day. It may sound insignificant, but for people like Harold, a 78-year-old man who once feared he was losing his memory, this small daily practice became a turning point. Within weeks, he began to notice changes that he did not think were possible anymore. In the next few minutes, you will discover exactly how this simple method works and how you can start using it yourself. Because losing your memory is not the only thing you should be afraid of. The real danger is believing there is nothing you can do to stop it. Most people believe that memory loss is simply a natural part of getting older. They assume that as time passes, the brain slowly weakens, becoming less reliable with each year. So when they begin to forget small things like names, appointments, or why they walked into a room, they rarely question it. Instead, they accept it and adjust their lives around it. But this common belief overlooks something important. Your brain does not simply shut down over time. In many cases, it adapts based on how you use it. As you age, your brain becomes more selective. It strengthens the connections that are used regularly and gradually weakens the ones that are ignored. This process is often described as use it or lose it, and it plays a major role in how memory changes over time. If your daily routine becomes predictable, if you stop learning new things, or if you rely less on active thinking, your brain receives fewer signals to maintain strong memory pathways. As a result, those pathways begin to fade, not because they are gone, but because they are no longer being reinforced. This is why two people of the same age can have very different levels of mental sharpness. One may struggle with simple recall, while the other remains clear, focused, and engaged. The difference is not just age. It is how their brain has been used. This is where the concept of neuroplasticity becomes important. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. What makes this especially powerful is that it does not stop at a certain age. Even later in life, the brain still retains the ability to adapt, rebuild, and improve its function when given the right kind of stimulation. Research has shown that when people engage in targeted mental activities, especially those that involve coordination, attention, and challenge, measurable improvements in memory can occur within a relatively short period of time. In other words, the brain is not fixed. It is responsive. However, Not all activities produce the same effect. Passive habits, such as watching television for long periods or scrolling through content, do little to activate deeper cognitive processes. What the brain responds to best are tasks that require focus, novelty, and a certain level of effort. This is exactly the principle behind the method introduced by Dr. Michael Carter. Rather than relying on long or complex routines, his approach focuses on brief but highly targeted stimulation. By combining simple physical movement with mental engagement, it activates multiple areas of the brain at the same time. And that combination is what makes it effective. In the next part, you will see how this method is applied in a real-life situation and why even small changes, when done consistently, can lead to meaningful improvements. Harold was 78 years old when he began to notice small changes in his memory. At first, they were easy to dismiss. He would occasionally forget why he had entered a room, or misplace everyday items like his keys or glasses. Sometimes, in the middle of a conversation, he would lose his train of thought and need a few seconds to recover. Like many people his age, he assumed this was simply a normal part of getting older. But over time, those small moments became more frequent. One afternoon, his grandson Ethan came running toward him, excited and full of energy, holding a drawing he wanted to share. Harold looked at him, smiled, and listened as the boy spoke. Everything felt familiar. The voice, the face, the connection were all there. But when he tried to say his name, nothing came. For a brief moment, Harold froze. He tried to recall it, searching his memory, but it simply was not there. He quickly covered it up with a laugh, hoping no one would notice. But inside, something had shifted. That moment stayed with him long after the day ended. Later that evening, sitting quietly by himself, a thought kept returning. What if this is only the beginning? What if next time it is not just a name, but something more important? From that point on, Harold became more cautious. He spoke less during family gatherings, worried that he might forget words or lose track of conversations. He avoided telling stories he once enjoyed, afraid that he would not be able to finish them. Slowly, without realizing it, he began to withdraw. And as he used his memory less, it seemed to weaken even more. Concerned about these changes, his daughter eventually encouraged him to see Dr. Michael Carter. Harold was hesitant at first. He expected to hear that his condition was irreversible, that this was simply something he would have to accept. But what he heard instead surprised him. Dr. Carter explained that his brain was not failing. It had simply not been stimulated in the right way for a long time. The connections responsible for memory and focus had weakened, but they had not disappeared. And with the right kind of activity, they could be strengthened again. Instead of prescribing complicated treatments, Dr. Carter suggested something much simpler: a short daily exercise that would take less than a minute to complete. At first, Harold was unsure. It seemed too simple to make any real difference. But he decided to try. During the first few days, it felt unfamiliar and slightly uncomfortable. His mind wandered, and he struggled to stay focused. But he continued anyway. After about a week, he began to notice small improvements. Conversations became easier to follow. He felt slightly more present and aware. By the second week, the changes became clearer. He could recall details more quickly, and he felt more confident when speaking with others. Then one day, Ethan ran up to him again, just as he had before. This time, without hesitation, Harold smiled and said his name. It was a simple moment, but it meant more than anything else. Because for the first time in a long time, Harold no longer felt like he was losing his memory. He felt like he was getting it back. After understanding how the brain works and why memory begins to fade, the next question becomes simple. What exactly should you do to improve it? Dr. Michael Carter's approach is built around one key idea. Instead of overwhelming the brain with long or complicated routines, you can stimulate it effectively in a very short amount of time, as long as the activity is done in the right way. This is where the 60-second exercise comes in. It may seem simple at first, but each part of it is designed with a specific purpose. To begin, find a quiet place where you can sit comfortably. You do not need any special equipment, and there is no need to prepare anything in advance. The goal is simply to give your full attention to the exercise for a short period of time. Start with your posture. Sit upright, relaxed but alert, and bring your focus to your breathing. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, then gently exhale through your mouth. Do this for a few seconds to help your mind settle and become more present. Once you feel focused, begin the first part of the exercise. Using your hands, perform a simple coordinated movement. For example, you might tap your right hand on your left shoulder while your left hand taps your right knee, then switch sides in a steady rhythm. The exact movement is not as important as the coordination. What matters is that both sides of your body are involved and that your brain has to actively guide the motion. As you continue this movement, maintain a slow and steady breathing pattern. This helps reduce stress and allows your brain to stay engaged without feeling overwhelmed. After a few seconds, add the second layer. While continuing the hand movements, begin a mental task. You might start naming animals, listing cities, or recalling items from a specific category. Try not to repeat the same answers and keep the pace steady but slightly challenging. At this point, your brain is doing multiple things at once. It is controlling movement, regulating breathing, and processing information. This combination is what makes the exercise effective. You are not just passively thinking, you are actively engaging different parts of your brain at the same time. The entire process only takes about 60 seconds. It may feel unusual at first, especially if you are not used to coordinating movement and thought together. But that slight discomfort is actually a sign that your brain is being challenged in a new way. And that is exactly what it needs. With regular practice, this simple exercise can begin to strengthen the connections responsible for memory, focus, and mental clarity. Not by forcing the brain to work harder, but by helping it work differently. In the next part, you will understand why this method is so effective and what is happening inside your brain when you practice it consistently. At this point, you might be wondering why such a simple exercise can create noticeable changes in memory. The answer lies in how your brain responds to combined stimulation. Most daily activities only activate one part of the brain at a time. For example, when you are watching television, your brain is mostly receiving information. When you are doing a repetitive physical task, your body is active, but your thinking is minimal. These activities require very little coordination between different brain regions. The exercise you just learned works differently. By combining movement, breathing, and mental challenge, it forces multiple areas of the brain to work together at the same time. Your motor system is controlling your hands, your prefrontal cortex is handling focus and decision-making, and your memory centers are actively retrieving information. This creates what is known as a higher cognitive load. In simple terms, your brain is being pushed slightly beyond its usual pattern. Not enough to overwhelm it, but enough to make it adapt. And when the brain adapts, it begins to strengthen the connections between neurons. Over time, these stronger connections make it easier to recall information, stay focused, and process thoughts more clearly. Another important factor is stress. When your mind is under constant stress, your body produces higher levels of cortisol. This hormone can interfere with memory and concentration if it remains elevated for long periods. The breathing component of the exercise helps reduce this effect, allowing your brain to function more efficiently while you practice. This is why the exercise is designed to be short but consistent. You do not need to spend a long time doing it. What matters is that you repeat it daily, giving your brain regular signals to stay active and responsive. To make the most of this method, it helps to follow a simple progression. During the first week, focus on getting comfortable with the basic movement and maintaining steady breathing. There is no need to rush. The goal is to build consistency. In the second week, begin to increase the difficulty of your mental task. Choose categories that require more effort or challenge yourself to respond more quickly. By the third and fourth weeks, you can combine more complex movements or switch between different mental challenges within the same session. This keeps the brain engaged and prevents it from falling back into routine. However, there are a few common mistakes that can reduce the effectiveness of this practice. The first is assuming that memory decline is unavoidable and not taking the exercise seriously. Without belief and consistency, results are unlikely. The second is watching or learning the method but never actually practicing it. Like any form of training, improvement only comes through action. The third is stopping too early. Many people try something new for a few days and give up before any real change has time to occur. Avoiding these mistakes can make a significant difference. To improve your results even further, keep a few simple tips in mind. Try to practice at the same time each day so it becomes part of your routine. Gradually increase the level of challenge to keep your brain engaged. And support your mental performance with basic habits like staying hydrated and getting enough sleep. Small actions done consistently can lead to meaningful change. And in this case, that change starts with just 60 seconds. By now, you have seen something that most people never stop to question. Memory loss is not always a fixed, irreversible process. In many cases, it reflects how the brain has been used over time. When it is no longer challenged, it begins to slow down. But when it is activated in the right way, it can respond, adapt, and improve. From my perspective, what makes this approach valuable is not just the exercise itself, but how simple and accessible it is. It does not require special tools, a large time commitment, or drastic changes in your lifestyle. It is something almost anyone can try, regardless of age or starting point. At the same time, it is important to be clear about one thing. The story of Harold is an example used to help illustrate how consistent mental stimulation can lead to improvement. It does not represent a guaranteed outcome for everyone, and it should not be seen as a replacement for professional medical advice or treatment. If you are experiencing serious or rapidly worsening memory issues, it is always important to speak with a qualified healthcare professional. However, for many people, small daily habits like this can still play a meaningful role in supporting better focus, clarity, and overall brain function. And that is where this becomes practical. You do not need to overthink it. You can start today. Try this exercise for the next 7 days. Just 60 seconds each day. Stay consistent, stay present, and observe what changes, even if they seem small at first. Then come back and share your experience. Your feedback may not only help you stay accountable, but it could also encourage someone else who is going through the same concerns. And if you found this helpful, consider subscribing for more simple, practical ways to support your mental clarity and long-term brain health. Because improving your memory does not always require something complicated. Sometimes it begins with one small decision repeated daily.